We'll go ahead and actually start now. So this is our podcast for our leadership book that we're doing for our class. The book that we chose to read is Wooden on Leadership by head coach John Wooden, coach of the UCLA Bruins back in the 60s and 70s. And so we're just going to start the podcast by all of us going around and sharing a little bit on what we found interesting or what we found as a highlight for us personally when reading the book. So, who wants to go ahead and start?
I
I
can
can.
lead us off.
Do
Oh,
you want to
sorry.
go? Do you want to
I
go?
can go ahead.
All right, go ahead.
What stood out to me was just the number of like small habits he had that added towards like a championship mindset. A big thing for me that stood out was like I almost found myself being skeptical of like his mindset, his process, and it's like there's no way you were holding those players to that standard. There's no way you were doing all these things yourselves. And then one thing I think added to it was like the player excerpts like throughout, and it would be the players just like basically backing up everything he had said in the previous chapter, where it's like, no, he actually was like that. Um, and then I actually had a like a couple excerpts from the book that stood out to me. This was like when he was talking about intentness, I believe is what he called it in the book. That was one of his like the layers of his pyramid. And one like big part I liked was good things take time, usually lots of time. Achieving worthwhile goals requires intentness. There are setbacks, losses, unexpected reversals, hardships, and bad luck. Does the fight continue? The team will look to you for the answer. When threatened, you go over, under, or around. Perhaps you do the same thing again, only better and harder. In the face of severe adversity, this conduct is only possible with intentness. I don't know about you guys, but I was ready to run through a brick wall when I read that.
Fired up.
I
I
got
was
I
fired
got
up when I
chills.
read that. That woke something up in me.
Might
Uh,
go to the gym after this.
yeah, no, no, that was yeah, I was fired up reading that paragraph. But yeah, so there's just all those small details, all those little things that he was about that added up to all those championship teams. Are what stood out to me.
I love that. I I found it really interesting that it was in the kind of like in the midway point of the book where he talked about how the players had to be good at everything in the game. And I thought that was an interesting perspective because nowadays it's pretty commonplace for in the NBA at least and in college that you have to be serviceable in different aspects of the game. But back then, you could have specialists on a team where it was okay to only shoot three pointers. It was okay to only be able to rebound or only play defense, but wouldn't want it more than that from his players. He wanted a group of people that could serve the team in different ways in whatever the game dictated it. So if this one game the players needed to rebound more, or if this other game they needed to pass more, like I love that from him because he wanted them to be prepared in all facets of the game, and that's pretty interesting because I don't know why more coaches never followed that perspective in that era. Uh, but I love it, just him preparing his guys in every single way possible. It just made them better basketball players, and clearly it worked. They won for a decade long, so
Well, I love that too, because even in that one, he goes on to explain it even further. It's like, what's the point of being able to get open if you can't shoot, and what's the point of shooting if you can't even get yourself open? So
right.
knowing every aspect makes you the best in the field, and it's going to make you stand out. And something that stood out to me from this book is it kind of, when I started reading it, it reminded me a little bit of the book Atomic Habits. And it's just kind of like a improve yourself self-help book where he's basically just trying to help us become better people, have good character. I love how he talks even about like good values attract good people. It wasn't just trying to always find the most talented, it was trying to find the people with the best character. And some of the quotes that really stuck out to me were actually both quotes that his dad gave. The first one was, "Don't worry about whether you're better than somebody else, but never cease trying to be the best you can become. You have control over that, the other you don't." And then he goes on, and his dad says in a different chapter, there were six things that he always told his kids never to do. And he said, never lie, never cheat, never steal. Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. And I feel like that's honestly a good motto for life. If we follow that, I feel like everything else will come in the line.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Think something really important to me about this book was, it teaches really valuable lessons, but it's not like a super complex read. It's pretty easy to understand, especially with how, busy our schedules are. I think it would be a good book to recommend to anybody that's going into like a coaching position or any sort of leadership position. It's not gonna like something you have to like rack your brain around to try to understand what the book is trying to teach you, right? And I think one of the things that stuck with me the most is just kind of Wooden's definition of success and how like the peace of mind that comes from knowing you made the effort to prepare and be the most capable you can be and not from the outcome itself. I think like in society today, we're always so concerned about like the outcome and if we made such a great grade. But at the end of the day, I think it's more important that you put in the time to prepare and try to be the best person you can be. So I think that was one thing that really stuck with me about this book.
I thought something similar for that one. Um, a lot of the self-help spaces and stuff right now are talking about the concept of like if a somebody had a camera on you throughout your day when you weren't looking and saw everything you did, would they believe the goals that you're saying that you set for yourself? And I think he's somebody who truly lived what that really means, and that everything he did was planned, it was intentional. He used every second of every day to complete a goal that he said he was going to do. And all of his players came around, like Luke said, with all of the, you know, backing up what he said he was going to do. He did all of it, he lived it, and he accomplished it, right? His goal was success that he thought his definition was to work as hard as he could all the time. And he really did that, obviously. I mean, just looking at everything he did throughout his life was insane. So, I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, my big takeaway is playing off of what y'all were just kind of talking about. What was so impressive to me was like, what he was saying, kind of like you were saying, Reed, was just the principles and concepts he lived by were pretty simple. They're easy to understand. It's straightforward. And then, Hayden, you were just talking about like he actually did it. And I know I kind of mentioned to y'all in class, a few times when we talk about it. I think for me, it's like, he preached what a lot of other coaches preach, or, similar, maybe a little different here and there, but a lot of coaches preach or have principles the same that he did, but he actually did it. Where, a lot of coaches will preach one thing, but then their actions don't necessarily, follow up with what they're actually preaching. And so that creates, kind of the lack in leadership there, where he actually followed through on what he was preaching, which was really impressive to me. And I know one of the core components of his pyramid of success that I think goes hand in hand with this, that really was kind of the big one for me as I was reading the book, was self-discipline. I think he even talked about in one of the chapters later on how he would not let himself or his players express any form of emotion. Like they were just, they were locked in on what they were doing. There was like no highs and there was no lows. We were just, taking the road straight on. And for me, thinking about that, and I'm sure y'all can too, as former athletes, it's like, man, I would let emotion go all the time when playing. Like whether it was a good thing, getting super hyped, or if I made a bad player did something bad, I would be pissed and I'd be, letting some words fly over on the sidelines for sure. And so I think just that aspect of how he preached and how he demanded self-discipline, self-control out of himself and his players to just not let any emotion or anything whatsoever be shown. I thought that was pretty impressive and kind of a cool thing that he taught with his team.
Well, and I love that one too because it really teaches them to have control over their emotions, to rein themselves in. Because like I know even my dad, when growing up, he was coaching sports. If a kid started losing control, he'd sit him on the bench and put someone else in until they got their control back. So I thought it was awesome that he did that.
Yeah,
I
they
mean, I don't know
resemble
if y'all remember, but
sorry. You can go
you're
ahead,
good.
Hayden.
No, there was also times where he talks about like when he lost control and he fought the other coach. I mean, it came to blows. I mean, this is a man who has lived losing control in his life and then learned to gain it, so to speak. But I also think there's two sides to a coin, right? Like he spent a lot of his life controlling his emotions, but at some point it seemed like he controlled them to the point where nobody even knew what he felt about them. And I think that could also be a huge negative because he had to intentionally seek out his players to let them know that he felt positively about them. They could not tell that from his emotions. And to me, that's a negative. I think it
Yeah.
should be very obvious that you love your players, all of them. And that's not a controlling your emotions should allow you to express positivity and not just completely suppress every single part of everything you do, personally.
Yeah. It was crazy how he like never really mentioned winning or anything to the team directly,
Hmm.
which seems like counterintuitive for him after winning that many championships. It's like at some point you think I would want to like be proud of this, but he didn't really show that, I guess.
Well, I think
That
it
was
was
one of the things where I didn't believe that he didn't like stress winning or care about winning. And then sure enough, like player excerpt after player excerpt were like, yeah, he never once mentioned the outcome of the game. Like he mentioned when they played Houston and it was like the battle of the undefeated teams and they lost on like a last second shot and he like wasn't even mad afterwards. And that was to snap what like a 60 game win streak or something like that. They had a some streak going.
88 no streak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
88. Yeah,
Gosh.
Yeah,
and
88.
yeah, that snapped their win streak. And afterwards, he was just like, "Hey, we played hard. This is how we can, come back, fix it for next time. But like, you guys played your hearts out."
Yeah, I mean, you went 80 straight without losing. I mean, hey.
It's
Yeah.
absurd.
Pretty
It is
good.
what it is,
And
man.
then you barely lose. Like, I mean, he can't be mad, you know?
Well, I thought
Yeah.
it was fascinating too, like how he started the book by sharing why he stopped coaching. Like, I think it kind of goes in line with that too, of like, he never preached about winning as being his most important goal, or like, that example when they lost the streak, like it didn't really rattle him all that much. And he was like, the reason I stopped was because like essentially the fame and the paparazzi got to be too much for him. And it was like, that was interesting to me because I feel like that's different than I think a lot of people try to approach it from. Like nowadays, like a lot of people, that's what they try to seek out with doing success or having success within athletics, entertainment, whatever, is to get that attention, to get that fame. And for him, he achieved that level by being so successful, but he was like, I did not like that. So he's like, that's the reason I stepped down because it took away from my ability to coach and to teach. And so that was interesting to me because I feel like that is different than how a lot of people try to approach it nowadays.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays a lot of coaches they become so successful or they start winning a lot and they feel like they can maybe do that in like other teams that maybe don't have as good of a program or player development program. And I was curious to hear y'all's thoughts because as I was reading this, everything about what Wooden did was amazing. And obviously his body of work like backs that up. But I was curious to see y'all's opinion on, do you think that his style of leadership would actually translate to today's college game or even sports in general? Because he had a way and it was his way and it worked, obviously. But sports has changed so much from that point to today. So I was just kind of curious on hearing y'all's thoughts.
So my thoughts on that are he didn't scout opponents. Like I don't know
Insane.
how I don't know
Well,
how
and
you
the
would
other
win
thing
without
too,
scouting.
the other thing too that I thought was amazing was that, but then he also didn't, he was not the initiator of the recruitment with his
Yes.
players.
He
Like
was
he had the
another
players
guy.
come to him first before he went out. I thought that was crazy too.
Yeah, I want them to want to be a Bruin. That's what he
Yeah.
said. That's yeah, no, I don't know how that
Look,
happened. Just
when
hoping
your
that good
front
players.
line is Bill and Kareem, and then Gail Goodrich as a shooting guard, I mean, who do you really have to scout at that point?
Yeah, Sidney Wicks waiting in the wings.
But even with them, he didn't try and scout them, which was incredible. Even said, "Make me the last stop that you go to," like to
Hmm.
the his high school coach saying, "Make my school the last one." Basically, I want him to want to be here.
Yeah. No, the whole scouting thing, I think that might be where he might have just had better players and a better game. Like, I bet their game plan was bulletproof because, like, think of how much time that saves you in a practice and like man hours outside of practice is like not having to scout opponents, just getting so focused in your own offensive game plan and like you're going to play the same defense. You're going to run like you're going to try to perfect that defense. And you're just going to like try to play your own like perfect game. And so I thought like, yeah, I think that would work then. I don't know if that would translate to right now.
It's hard. I mean, the game's evolved so much. It's so complex. And even like going just outside of the game, like the way that college athletes are treated in today's era compared to back then, they have so much power over programs nowadays. And they can just, if they don't like their situation, they can just get up and go anywhere where they want. It's a pick of the litter. But I mean, I still think like I still think that he would have like success in programs just because his dedication and commitment to players is so incredible that I still feel like he would gather a pretty good group of athletes who are just committed to him and committed to doing their best, and he would probably do good.
I think that goes back to like what we've talked about in class of you have to like it has to be a culture fit. Like you can't bring in guys that aren't going to buy into what the coach is saying. Um, I liked when he didn't recruit that one kid because he said something to his mom to
Yeah, be
like,
Mhm.
quiet.
yeah, he like snapped at his mom, and it's like, yeah, I'm not recruiting that kid. Like if he's treating his mom that way, how's he going to treat me as his coach? So yeah, I think that like it could work, but then I think like I'm a Kansas guy. I'm a Jayhawk fan. 2 weeks after we lost out in March Madness this year, we had one player on the roster.
Wow.
All of them entered the portal. Like
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I think that like the pendulum has kind of swung too far in favor of the players now. They kind of have I think a little too much power for their own good with like the transfer portal and everything. I think that like all the guys that played for John Wooden would say that it was such a positive experience for them. It's so good for them like outside of basketball. But I think it's just now it's so focused on what am I getting paid? What are my minutes looking like? Where it's no longer about the team concept. It's how can I set myself up for the next level?
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I would agree. I would say even that it is very effective and it would work all the way. The hardest part, I think, to keep his method relevant in today's college basketball is the salary, because I feel like that kind of undoes it. And even who was it? I think it was one of the top most famous coaches basically told Congress, if I'm not mistaken, said, "Hey, if some of this stuff isn't taken care of in the salary, it's going to ruin the sport." And I thought that was like crazy, mind-boggling. And it was one of the top coaches of all time. I'm trying to remember if
Yeah,
who was
it
the
was
quote?
it was Nick Saban from
I
Yes,
think it
Nick
Alabama.
was
Saban.
Saban.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was Nick Saban. So I think it's the salary that would make this hard to keep, because a lot of people would be like, well, I could go somewhere else for more money. If it weren't for the salary, I think this would be very relevant still to today.
Yeah.
I still think it's relevant. I do think
Yeah.
the money game is definitely a factor that's changed from today versus then for sure. But I think his approach, kind of to what you were, I guess a few of y'all were saying, Robert and Luke, of like I think he would still do well today, and I still think he would take the same exact approach he took back then, and it would be entirely, like you were saying, Luke, a culture thing. Like if the guys weren't fitting what he was trying to teach and trying to coach and have them fall within his team, he wouldn't take them. And so, I think if you find the guys who fit within a culture who are willing to commit and compete to what the standards are, I think you'll have success with that. Will they win 7 consecutive national championships? Probably not. You never know, but still would probably be an excellent team, an excellent
Mhm.
coach for sure.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
you
If he
also
kind of,
think that? Here, go ahead, Luke. You're fine.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that given like the other coaches around at the time, like if when you look at his coaching tree, um, like it's kind of crazy because Adolph Rupp, one of his former assistants, Kentucky's arena is named Rupp Arena. John Wood, like UCLA Stadium, is named after John Wooden. They mentioned Fog Allen from Kansas. Allen Fieldhouse is where Kansas played. So it's these like so many legendary coaches come from the John Wooden coaching tree. And so you think about like not just within UCLA, but like his impact, but his impact on the game of basketball as a whole. Like, dare I say, he set a culture shift within college basketball for the next 50, 70 years
Oh,
after he was done.
absolutely.
I was just saying earlier, I think Wooden would actually hate basketball as it is right now
Yeah.
just because of how much of a
Yes.
popular celebrity sport it is. And it's no longer the game that he once knew. The loyalty aspect of the game that he thrived on, that he proposed within his structure is gone. Players will go wherever they have to, period. And
Yeah.
there's good and bad things about that, but there also is the fact that the internet has exploded since he was a major coach. I mean, if he was worried about eyes being on him, right, and 50 years ago when he was thinking about leaving, nowadays he couldn't scratch his nuts without having a camera on him. There's no way he would ever want to be in basketball. There's zero chance. He would hate every second of it. I guarantee it.
No, I think so too. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50. I think his principles would still apply like for sport for the rest of time. But at the same time, like he would have to go about some things differently as far as like his recruiting and some of the lessons he would try to teach his players. And I think Luke, you said it perfectly. Like I just think the game has changed a little bit too much now to the point where players are more concerned with like, what am I going to get out of this? How is this going to make me better? What opportunities am I going to get from this versus really buying into that team mentality and kind of everything that he preached. So I don't know. It would just take, I think he would have to put more effort into finding that like perfect group of players that will buy into his
Mhm.
philosophy, which I think would be pretty hard in today's game. But I don't know. It could work.
Yeah, I
How
just
do
think
you
of
feel about his philosophy?
sorry, what'd you say, Hayden?
No, how do you feel about like that philosophy of success he constantly talks about in the book?
I
Agree,
So
mean, it
disagree?
clearly worked, right? I
yeah,
think I think it is something that can work, but you just need like a special group of players that will like completely buy into that. I think the next closest thing we've seen like since that is probably like Saban's, reign at Alabama. But other than that, I mean, I
Mhm.
can't really think of another, you know, dynasty like that.
I'd say probably the other one too would be women's college basketball with UConn's head coach.
Mhm.
He's done really well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of like we were talking about before, I think just it would definitely be a mentality shift for a lot of people this day and age for sure, of just kind of what the outlook is, kind of what the goal is, and just that shift of like what you define success by for sure.
yeah. I think like one thing that made me think this wouldn't be sustainable in today's game was when he switched to the 7-man rotation. Where you have the 5 starters and the 2 bench players, and then everybody else is like not really going to play. And he said that he sat down those 5 other players that were left out. It's a 12-man roster in college basketball, right?
Yeah.
So he had the 7 that were going to play the bulk of the minutes. And then he said he sat down the 5, kind of called them into his office one at a time and told them, like, hey, this is the plan. We just kind of want you to be our practice squad guy. Be ready to when your number is called. If it's called, if we get some injuries, you'll get some playing time. And I was just thinking, like, man, those kids would be in the portal right after they left.
Immediately.
An
Yeah.
Yeah.
immediate career killer in today's game. Like there would
Yeah.
just be no.
Yeah.
I
You
think,
tell kids there's no chance they're getting in unless there's like an injury or something.
I even thought too while reading it, like I didn't realize he was at UCLA for as long as he was prior to winning those national championships. Because I think that's also a big difference today versus then is like loyalty to your coaching staff from like a university standpoint. Because what did he talk about? Like the first year he said they were really successful, they were barely above 500. Like I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of times nowadays coaches are getting, booted out the back door if that's what they're producing from their teams because winning is that definition of success
Yeah.
where I think that is such a huge difference. Like, would if he was coaching today, that'd be a thought too. Is like if he had a lot of those mediocre, quote unquote mediocre, win-loss seasons prior to winning all those championships, would he have even made it to that point nowadays? Because the viewpoint of winning being success is so dominant today that, who knows if he would have been able to get to that point nowadays.
That's really true. That's a good point.
Mhm.
I think he still would because if you can his whole thing was working with unity. You can have a team of 5 guys that work together really well versus one all-star. I'm going to pick the team of 5 that work together well every time. And so I like his definition of success where it's not like what most of the world might see it as. It was just, are you doing your best? And if you are, the win is a byproduct that will come because of the consistent, perfect effort.
Right. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we've hit our 20-minute mark, gone over it actually a little bit. So, does anyone want to share any last minute thoughts on the book before we close out our little podcast here?
Kind of going back to, I don't remember who touched on it earlier, but when John Wooden was saying like he wanted to get like well-rounded players and like you can't specialize in just one thing. Kind of like a PT implication, I thought, is like everybody kind of has like a joint that they like to, like I'm a shoulder guy, like I like to work with knee patients, where it's like in a PT, you really need to be able to treat anything that walks through the door. You have to be just as capable of treating a wrist, a hip, a cervical issue, vestibular. Like you have to be well-rounded in that regard. So the whole book, I felt like there were a lot of just like different PT applications, and even just like the way you can lead a patient through the rehab process and manage their emotional state, the highs and the lows. This book was just full of, great bits and pieces for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think something else tied to that real quick is like just how obsessed he was with preparing regardless of what the circumstance was, right? Which I think is something we can tie into our patients. There's always going to be patients where we're more excited to work with, like a certain athlete or somebody, but I think you should prepare to treat any type of patient the same way you would want to treat like your favorite patient, right? Because they all deserve the same kind of care and preparation from you, regardless of the circumstance.
You
Yeah.
got to love them all equally, but you can't like them all the same.
There
Yes.
you
It's
go.
easier said than done, but
Yeah. And for those who haven't read the book, I would definitely recommend this. I'd say it's a top-notch
Absolutely.
book. I would put it
Mhm.
on the level of like Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I'd even put it above some of the other books like Dare the Lead. I would say it was one of my all-time top books to read.
Yep. Haven't read a book in a long time, but love reading this one for sure.
All righty, my friends. Well, I'll go ahead and close out our podcast here. Thanks to everybody who listened.